Welcome to Igniting Change, Finding Your Fire, a weekly podcast with Meena Puri, an Ayurvedic practitioner and spiritual teacher who brings the ancient, time-tested wisdom of Ayurveda in this time of great upheaval and global ascension to inspire you to the next level of your spiritual evolution. She will discuss all topics related to your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. Are you ready to be free of all suffering and soar to your heart's calling? Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's podcast. So today's podcast, we're going to be having a conversation on a rather difficult topic, the topic of trauma. And trauma can be caused by abuse. Shame is a trauma pattern, and actually it's unlike that any of us can escape traumas in our life. So hopefully with this conversation, you will walk away feeling a little less intense, a little better, and a shifted perspective on trauma, and perhaps connecting the dots in your life and coming to a place of healing and resolution. So I am going to bring on the show Vanessa Boody. Vanessa and I have had conversation on trauma before. We're having another conversation because there's lots to talk about. So Vanessa is a licensed clinical social worker in state of Michigan and Utah. She has been practicing as a therapist for 8 years and specializes in trauma and anxiety. She recently took on a new role as a mom of a sweet baby girl, and who's napping right now. And who knows, she might join us if she wakes up from her nap. So you can find Vanessa sharing her thoughts on Instagram about mental health and all topics wellness. And her Instagram handle is VCB Wellness. And I'll be sharing more information on Vanessa on how to contact her towards the end of the show. So stay tuned. Vanessa, welcome to the show.
I just glanced over at the baby monitor, so we're still
So
covered.
we're still good. Still good.
Yeah.
Her ears might be burning.
Yes.
Well, welcome to the show. I'm
Thank
so
you.
glad that you agreed to join us in spite of your, schedule these days, and that you're willing to have another conversation on this very important topic that has hit most of our lives.
Yeah.
So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here. It's good to see you again.
Thank you. So where do we start? Where do we start? And I like to start with like an easy definition of trauma. So, in the past, when we may have thinking about just the word trauma makes us want to curl up and hide and cringe and feel a certain sense of shame about it. We don't want anybody to know about it. And so I like to, ease that for the listeners that, taking birth is traumatic.
Yes,
that's why the babies scream their head off when they come out of the mother's womb. It's like, oh my God, what the heck just happened?
Yeah. Where am I?
So where am I? And trauma, in my definition, to make it easy, is any experience that we simply don't know how to digest or what to do with.
Yeah.
So when we make this broad umbrella, when we look at trauma from the perspective of a broad umbrella, I think there's so much in our life where we simply haven't gotten the time to figure out what to do with it. We kind of shake our head and say, whatever, and we get busy with doing life. So in that perspective, I've had many traumas in my life. I don't know anyone, frankly, who hasn't. And on a lighter, like more positive note, not that I'm trying to keep it positive, I want to keep it real, but the truth is trauma is necessary. Don't ask me why. I didn't make the rules. I think it's the way it's the way that we access the deeper parts of ourselves.
Mm,
So the bigger message of trauma is to access those deeper parts and become a more completer version of yourself.
mm.
But we know that that's not necessarily what happens. What
Right,
happens
right.
is we actually get stuck in the trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So when we are stuck in the trauma, we are revisiting it again and again, almost on a daily basis for many. So we are actually re-traumatizing ourselves.
Yeah.
And so trauma is not in your head. Trauma is in the body. Your
Mm-hmm.
body holds the experience, the energetic imprints of trauma. And if we leave it there long enough, it'll show up as disease.
Mm,
So in the Western world, we look at the disease, we look at the symptoms, and we keep hovering, keep dancing on the surface from symptom to symptom, from a medical protocol to the next, from one pill to the next. It does not work. Then
right.
on the other hand, we have the world of psychiatry and modern, the specialists who deal with mental and emotional
Mm-hmm.
issues. They continue to look at the trauma separate from the body.
Mm-hmm.
They never address the body.
Yeah, yeah.
They never show that this is where trauma is showing up. So what happens for the patient, they never are able to connect the dots. So they are
Mm-hmm.
fragmenting their traumatic physical body and the emotional, the psychological.
Right.
And these two experts never talk to one another.
Yeah. There's no medication for
There's no
trauma.
medication for it, and there's no medication
Yeah.
for trauma. The medication is really for you to be mentally less intense and sedated
Mm-hmm.
about it so you
Yeah.
can function, which may be necessary sometimes.
Right, right,
But it doesn't solve the issue at the root
right.
cause. So this is the overall understanding of trauma. So sit back, relax. Um, Being traumatized is a human condition.
Yeah,
None of us will escape it.
yeah.
But what I hope to give you is hold it lightly and know that we can transcend it by moving through it and healing it, and actually really pulling in all parts of ourselves that trauma shatters away.
Mm.
Okay.
I love how you talk about that. That's really powerful. So yeah,
Thank
it's so
you.
true.
Thank
Like
you.
trauma is not, it is a hard, like you said, it's not a, it's not a light topic to talk about. And a lot of
No.
times, like you said, people hear that word trauma and there's almost that gut reaction of like, oh,
Mhm.
let's not go there. But I love what you said too, of there needs to be this shifting of perspective around trauma because it is inevitable and we've all experienced it to some degree. Um, one of my one of my favorite ways of describing and explaining trauma to people that I'm working with is um, I always go back to this definition. In fact, I think we talked about this the last time we did this, but
Uh-huh.
there's a text that talks about how trauma derives from the Greek word for wound. And if you think of the wound, that can be, in terms of the human perspective, they say any wound to the sense of self or the sense of safety. And I think when you explore trauma in that way, we've all experienced it to some degree. And I like to kind of talk to people too about there can be different levels of and degrees of trauma. Sometimes I'll refer to it as like capital T trauma and little t trauma. There might be in your
Exactly.
life the kind of
Mhm.
clear cut, big, heavy stuff. Maybe that's your capital T. And then
Mhm.
there may be kind of some of those little things that maybe haven't made, as what's the best way to describe it? As a
Severe
hard of an
impact.
impact. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, but they still hurt or they still matter. And I think it's important too that it's all uh, I came across this quote and I wish I knew who said it. Give them credit. I'll have to look it up. But it said that, trauma is in the eye of the beholder.
It
And
really is. So
yeah,
yeah,
what could be a big thing for me? Meaning
it's
you could be
not.
like, nah, you know
So
what?
you know what?
I see that, but that's not my experience. It's just
At the
so much personal and individual.
at the level of your being, body, mind, spirit, it doesn't know
Yeah.
the trauma from the big T or the little t.
Mm-hmm.
We can classify it as such because pain cannot be quantified.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, it's experienced the same way. So,
Mm-hmm.
an example comes to my mind, and many, I think most of us have experienced that you're driving, somebody is honking because you're driving too slow or whatever, or they don't have patience, and they pass you and they flip you.
Mm.
And and that has happened to me. And now I'm like, okay, buddy, thank you.
Yeah.
But before, when I, when I didn't know, I felt so bad.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my God, I've done something wrong.
Yeah.
So it's a very, and even something simple like that, which is a common day occurrence
Mm-hmm.
of human behavior, unfortunately,
Right. Right.
um, that's traumatic because you're like, okay, oh, thank God, I'll move over. Thank God that person is gone. And you kind of have a bad taste, but you don't know what to do about it. You
Mm-hmm.
think, well, I don't want to tell anybody about it because it just feels bad that I got flipped. And so we do nothing, but
Mm.
the aftertaste lingers.
Yeah.
Next time you're going on the road, there is that feeling of, I'm going to screw up.
Mm.
Somebody's going to get mad at me.
Yeah.
So these are simple things, but are they really simple things when it comes to human psyche?
Yeah.
It's
It's
all
kind of like, yeah, it's the way I like to think of it is it's maybe not exactly it's not always about what has happened in and of itself, but kind of the story that we
created
associate
from
it
it.
with, or write about it. And that's, again, that's a human thing to do. There may be some people that they get in the car and they're like, I got flipped off, whatever.
Whatever.
But
Yeah.
sometimes it can be like, did I do something wrong? I think I did do something wrong. And then, those core beliefs
Hmm.
are what we really call them, right? The ones that show up when something like that happens. And that's, again, the root of that is, um, something happened. Some sort of trauma has happened that those stories, they come out.
So it's your own filter or template
Yeah,
that
yeah,
you're showing up with, because
yeah.
if the filter is there, the beliefs are there, the energetics are
Mm-hmm.
there, you know, the external traumatic experiences are not going to end because you're
Right.
inviting that in as well.
Right. And that's where trauma work can get so
Yeah,
complex. And there's so many
complicated.
different, in the therapeutic world, right? There's
It
so many
really is.
different models and ways to approach that, because one model, say cognitive behavior therapy,
Yeah.
they may just say, "Hey, let's change that story." Like,
Hmm.
tell your mind something different, create a new story.
Yeah.
And for some people, that may work really well. For a
Does
lot of
exactly.
people with more perhaps complex trauma, or just, deeply rooted core beliefs, they've maybe tried rewriting that story many times,
And it doesn't work.
and it doesn't, well, and the way, exactly, it doesn't work. And the way I talk to the people that I often work with is, you may say it, and you can say it, because I like to say,
You can make
at
believe.
the end of the day, we can CBT, we can use CBT, we can CBT our way out of anything.
Mhm.
But does it feel true? Because again, trauma, like you were saying earlier, trauma gets stored in the body. It's not just up here in the thoughts
Absolutely.
in your head. It is, my body is holding on to something. And so I think there's such an important, when we talk trauma healing and trauma work,
Hmm.
it's not like, okay, I just have to, go to trauma therapy, and it'll,
No, no.
it'll all go away. So much of it is becoming in tune and aware of your body, and recognizing that the trauma and the emotions that are wrapped up in that trauma, they're going to be in your body. And so can we focus on where we feel certain things in our body? Can we learn to just be mindful of our body and sit with our body, sit with kind of that uncomfortable feeling. I think that's where a lot of the healing takes place, is
Thing
being
takes place,
able to be aware of your body. And again, that's not the end all be all by any
it's
means, because
not.
there's so
Again,
many layers.
this is there's it's not this is not a here's a 5 steps. There's
Yes.
no such
Yeah.
thing because,
Yeah.
like you said, everybody will experience the same traumatic situation differently.
Mm-hmm.
So I talked about, your own filter or template, but
Yeah.
it's really about the level of consciousness a person
Mm-hmm.
carries. So if the level of conscious is not there to tune into the responses from the body or the feeling sense, then it's kind of a norm. Then you
Mm-hmm.
have this, this low grade anxiety or depression, and you're like thinking, this must be life.
Mm.
But when you raise the level of your awareness, you become fine tuned
Yeah.
to how you are feeling. So then you can pick out those, the discomfort, the signals from the body, or
Yeah.
your feeling sense, the quality of your energy that you're feeling, and you
Mm-hmm.
clue in to say, hey, wait a minute, there's something going on here. One thing I do know in working with so many clients on trauma and also my own experience, when it comes to your soul, even the tiniest, I'm amazed, even the tiniest something that happened that went against your soul, it's not going to let you, you can't push it under the rug.
Yeah.
It won't
Yeah.
let you. And when you become really conscious,
Mm-hmm.
it littlest things will bug you. It's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing
Yeah.
because now you see it. Now you have to figure out how to resolve it.
Mm-hmm.
And but it's like it's a never ending work of, this is about becoming yourself.
Yeah.
How can
And I
we
would,
ever be done with that?
yeah, I would say to that too, a big part of trauma and that consciousness that you're talking about,
Mhm.
I think a big symptom of trauma, or what we see a lot of behaviorally, is it is hard. It's hard to connect with the body. It's hard to feel conscious, because in some ways, and maybe in certain traumas, maybe that connection to the body is hard to make, because maybe you feel like your body betrayed you, or something,
Oh my God.
something happened. Like, I think of,
We don't
like
connect
maybe it's
it
of
to, yeah.
abuse. Yeah, yeah. The body and the mind and, spirit, everything, every component that makes up who you are becomes kind of fragmented. And that's, these parts, that healing and that work is really about bringing all of those pieces and
Yeah,
parts
and
together,
exactly.
because
That's why just the
yeah,
physical approach or the psychological
yeah, yeah,
approach by themselves are incomplete.
yeah.
And you said something about trauma in the body.
Mm-hmm.
There was something else you said is really, like client's example came to my mind, where, what came to my mind was this, client that I was working with. Depending what I have noticed, the type of trauma, if there was parental abuse, the abuse that happened 60s, 70s,
Mm-hmm.
guised under disciplined
Mm-hmm.
and not intentionally guised. That's what, remember that those parents were abused themselves. So it's
Right,
just
right.
passing from generation to generation. And what I have noticed in those kind of situations for males, there's back pain.
Mm.
I've connected that. I mean, that has happened so many times, is back pain, because they come to me for back pain.
Yeah.
And so the back pain goes down, and then they're curious about my work. They want to do the deeper work. And then,
Mm-hmm.
oh my God, this happened. I didn't know there was any significance to that.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought that was normal
Mm-hmm.
under the disciplinary abuse.
Right, right.
Imagine making your soul believe that being physically abused, you need it.
Yeah. Nina,
Imagine, imagine
I
the
used
impact
to
of that.
Yeah, I used to when I first started my career, I worked a lot with children in foster care.
Yeah. Oh my
And,
gosh.
a lot of those children, it's all they knew, like if we're the way our brain is wired is through patterns.
We can normalize something
Exactly,
to
exactly. And
survive.
so if you're in that type of situation, if you grew up in that situation, or like you were saying, these clients you've worked with, that becomes your normal.
Hmm.
And even hearing, later on, like, well, that actually is not okay. And that's not, it's hard to rewrite that script that
No,
your
it's very,
mind, yeah.
it's a deeply embedded. And then I've had
Mm-hmm.
actually, this is again male clients. They're like,
Yeah.
did anybody witness? Did you share this with anybody? No, I didn't know I was supposed to. I
Yeah.
didn't know what this was until in the work I revealed to them
Yeah.
that what I'm going to tell you, your soul already knows.
Yeah.
Is this okay for your soul? No,
Mm.
it isn't. You know why? Because it isn't. It's many times, we don't disclose such things because we don't want to talk ill of our parents,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? There's a guilt about it. So then
Mm-hmm.
again, understanding that, remember, they really thought they were disciplining you.
Right.
And remember, that's how they were disciplined, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not, that's all they knew.
Right. Right.
So there's no, fear about, oh my God, I'm going to put my parents in a bad light. We have all been there in
Mm-hmm.
the time, in the age of ignorance, or I call it the age of innocence.
Mm-hmm.
We just kind of lived in a default way,
Mm.
right? We
Yeah.
didn't live consciously.
Yeah.
We are moving towards more consciousness, but the default way of living was feel what you feel, express what you express, and you just do whatever. You're just trying to figure it out. And
Mm.
we're slowly really figuring out how to be human. And we've just
Mm-hmm.
barely touched the surface,
Yeah. Yeah.
what it feels to be human. So yeah, there's so much of that comes in my work. And
Mm.
I always feel like I want to talk about it, but
Yeah.
I want to be very sensitive to the
Absolutely.
audience who's listening
Yeah.
because this is heavy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So having a conversation with, another trauma specialist, the work that you do, so we can, have a conversation with ease
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
really assure the listeners that there's nothing wrong with you. There's
Right.
nothing to be ashamed of. You remember your parents are themselves abused,
Mm.
right? So we can twist that around with the healing work is to turn that into acceptance of the times and
Mm.
deep compassion for yourself and for them,
Yeah.
and realize that this is part and parcel of becoming fully human.
Yeah. Can I add something with
Yeah,
that? Just like
please.
with that acceptance piece, because a
Yeah,
lot of times we hear acceptance, and I think especially like in terms of grief. I think with trauma work, you're obviously going to be dealing with some sort of grief, because
yeah,
grief is that sensation and emotion that comes with any sort of loss.
yeah,
And with acceptance, because acceptance, if we think of stages of grief, that's one of
yeah.
the stages. Um, Acceptance doesn't have to mean it was okay. you
No,
know it's
exactly.
acceptance does not mean, oh, it's okay that that happened, because
Uh,
no one, abuse is never okay. Maybe at the time, like you said, they didn't know, right? That was the way they were raised. They kind of maybe were just doing what they thought they were supposed to do to discipline, or whatever that situation may be. But acceptance doesn't mean that it was okay, but it's maybe saying, okay, this happened, it's not okay, but I can be okay. Or what do I need to be okay? How can I
right,
be
exactly.
okay?
It's connecting with the mystical, the cosmic,
Yeah.
the
Mm.
spirituality. Um, it doesn't mean you like it, you agree
Right,
with
right.
it.
Yeah.
It just means that, the sky is blue.
Yeah.
Well, today it isn't. It's gray. When it's blue, when it's blue, it's like, I can't
Yeah.
change that.
Mm-hmm.
acceptance of what is. It's a deep acknowledging
Mm.
that something happened, because
Yeah.
it really takes away so much of the energy that we use in hiding it, because
Mm-hmm.
we're hiding it because it's so painful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So much other gets triggered with that. It's so painful,
Mm-hmm.
and it becomes, like you said, in your work, it becomes complex.
Mm-hmm. With your, because I love the way you describe it, and it's such an interesting way to approach trauma, because again, not many people, I like to think that the idea of trauma work, like we've said, is shifting, and people are
Yeah.
becoming more aware of just the different levels and layers that make up trauma, and the energies that are stored in the body, like you're
Yeah.
talking about.
Mhm.
Within your work, do you or have you heard of, or do you discuss kind of like this idea of a window of tolerance? Have you heard of that, or?
Yeah, and absolutely. Yeah, the window of tolerance is, again, is it it usually becomes more relevant
Mhm.
after the fact,
Yeah, yeah. Well, because
right?
I think of like what what you're saying, like with our bodies and what we hold, we all have kind of a window of tolerance,
Window of tolerance, and
what we
then
can handle,
mhm,
what we can tolerate. And I think a lot of times when there's trauma, your window of tolerance may be very, very
because what I'm
thin.
saying is like is very, it can happen both ways.
Yeah.
It can become really big
Mhm.
because you continue to normalize it,
Yeah.
because survival is at stake for many people.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
happens in, relationship, marriages, domestic abuse,
Mm.
where one spouse has nowhere to go. Mostly it's women.
Yeah.
They're afraid. And so they their tolerance becomes bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
Before they even know it, they have numbed themselves out because they've
Exactly.
sold their
Yeah.
soul out to be able to survive this. So
Yeah.
this becomes it's very painful. It's very overwhelming. It's very
Yeah.
difficult. Um, it's a very difficult situation to be in. But on the other hand, if you clue into this is not okay by me,
Mhm.
you can come to a place where somebody kind of gives you a look. They've said plenty with their eyes, with their body language. Most of us, you're like, oh, that felt weird. But we don't say anything.
Mhm.
It's coming to that little tolerance where you can turn around and say, are you upset about something? Did I upset you?
Mm.
Did you not like what I did or presented? We just bring it to the head right then
Yeah.
and there. We don't walk away from it. And that's when we're really connected to our soul. We're really tuned in. It's like, no, zero tolerance. When it comes to, the resolution of it,
Mm.
zero tolerance. You know why? Because your soul actually has zero tolerance for it.
Mm.
It has zero tolerance for it. It will never push anything under the rug. It'll bug you
Mhm.
like crazy when you begin to do the inner work. You
Yeah.
want to roar. You want to stand up for yourself, and you're like, I'm done. No more.
Mhm.
You will never do that to me again. And this
Mm.
is, I guess, I think this is the message. This is the don't we get into our head. It's okay. I know other people who go through worse. I
Mm.
guess it's
Yeah.
okay. And then another thing we go through is we intellectualize it.
Yeah.
Well, he or she is good at that time, so I'll hold on to that.
Mhm.
Um, so these are all temporary coping mechanisms which will
Mhm.
send you down spiral very quick. So it's kind of like, when we're drinking, if like the drink one glass and it's after the one glass, you're like, well, what the heck? I want to get the buzz, and you're chasing the first buzz. It's probably a
Mhm.
poor analogy, but that's what comes to my mind. I don't know why it's the alcohol, and so it's kind of like, uh, when we stay at the mental, intellectualized level of what's happening to us, it can we can increase that window of tolerance
Mm.
to our own demise.
Yeah, yeah.
So please don't intellectualize it. Please do not forgive somebody so quickly. Forgiveness comes later. Forgiveness needs to happen. But
Mm-hmm.
we don't want to do a mental forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
You have to go through the process. You have to connect with your heart and saying, how did that feel?
Yeah.
How did that make me feel? Put language behind it. What are the words? How does that make me feel about myself? Many people begin to feel fearful, untrusting, unworthy. Their confidence goes away. I mean, it's tragic what happens to them psychologically. So you want to tune into the deeper layers of not, don't worry about, I shouldn't say don't worry about how am I going to survive this? What am I going to do? These are very legit questions. Again, we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about extreme domestic violence type of issues.
Right, right.
Um, so safety first. You do have to be smart about it. Um, Getting an ally,
Mm-hmm.
neighbor, friend, help is absolutely crucial. You cannot not have somebody be included in this story, in whatever you're
Right.
experiencing. That's going to help you hugely. But when you come to a place where you feel safe to go in, where you feel safe to connect with what you're really feeling, then at that level, you are going to know that there is zero tolerance.
Yeah. And I think you're touching on, sometimes even saying safe. Do I feel safe? Can I feel
See?
safe?
Yeah,
Safety can be such a huge barrier to healing trauma because
it
that might be at the
is.
root of it. It's hard to feel safe. And
Yeah.
so I think sometimes too, in terms of like, okay, how can I get there? How can I heal? It's taking those small steps. With anything, if we feel like, okay, well, I'm here, I want to be here type of thing, there's
Mhm.
going to be a lot of steps along the way to get there. And healing and especially with trauma work, healing does not just look like a straight line up on the up and up. It's
No,
kind
not
of
at all.
ups and downs and peaks and valleys.
It's a messy. It's messy. It's gritty,
Yeah.
and it's just messy.
Yeah.
And so that's why support is utmost.
Absolutely.
Having an
Yeah.
ally, having someone in your corner, having somebody see you, hear you, acknowledge you,
Yeah.
and hold space for you is a huge deal. Again, we're talking very general.
Mm-hmm.
Trauma is so specific. Every situation is so unique and so specific. That's why really it's a one-on-one, this individual work
Yeah. Yeah.
that's going to cut the ticket.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you reach out to people who really need it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe they can start listening to something like this. And so on other perspective, I just think that if you connect deeply with what you're experiencing, things appear.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you decide no means no, when you
Mm-hmm.
decide no, I think the universe shows up
Mm-hmm.
to protect you. It'll give you ways. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like when you made a decision, you're going to do something, you don't know how the heck you're going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, resources show up. So I think of something like this is when you realize no, I think the ways are going to show up. I think the universe is going to show up for you in a big way because you're taking a stand for you.
Yeah. I love the way you say that. I mean, I know that's like really hard. That can be a really hard
It
place
can
to
be a
get
really
to.
hard thing, but if
Yeah.
you feel like on the verge of, I want to take a stand, I think take a stand with prayer and trust
Mm-hmm.
that you'll be safe. Because,
Yeah.
in situations like this, when we can't appeal to humans, we appeal to God,
Yeah.
right? We connect with the cosmic, we connect with the mystic, we connect with the quantum.
Higher power.
We
Yeah.
connect with the higher power because there's more resolution there for you. Because, like on the vertical zone is our relationships in this world. And if we stay is kind of horizontally like this, we can't see the solution. So to see the solutions, we have to go up. So then the perspective changes, more becomes available to us. So, remember, fear and doubt is like the dry rot of the world because there's no such thing. It's the absence of love, it's the absence of trust. So, can you love yourself enough? Can you start loving yourself? What feels loving to you? Does it feels loving to you to normalize the trauma and creating a bigger and bigger tolerance window? Or does it feel loving to you to say, no, no, there's no normalizing it. No, I need to take a stand. What feels loving to you? Again, this is hard work, but to continue to the sustained trauma is harder. Maybe, I don't know.
But like you said, sometimes it gets numbed and it becomes the normal, and
It
that
becomes
does
the
feel kind
normal.
of easy.
And we're good with doing that because
Yeah.
survival is hardwired.
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing we have learned how to do is to survive.
Yeah. I'm a visual person myself.
Yeah.
And I love to use like analogies. And so one
Yeah.
analogy that I'll often talk with people that are maybe hesitant, or maybe they're not sure if they can get there. Maybe they come in and like, Vanessa, I don't know if I can ever get past this. And I know this stuff. I know what I need to do, but I can't feel that. I like to think of like if you're going to the beach. And if, when you're going, if I often tell people if you think of the ocean represents emotion, it rhymes. So
Yeah.
it can be kind
Yeah.
of easy to remember. Maybe you're heading to the beach, but
Yeah.
maybe you're that person that you're like, no, I'm going to stay up in the mountains far, far away from the water because I don't
Yeah.
want to go there.
Yeah.
But I try to help people recognize like, hey, what does it take to drive down to the beach? What does that look like for you
Sure.
individually, not like literally driving to the beach, but
Mhm.
what if that's the idea, was we're trying to connect to that emotion and we're trying to go to that place. What does that look like to get there? And again, taking those steps along the way to get there. And then once you get there, one thing that I remind people too, again, this idea of emotion is the ocean or whatever. When you are at the beach, when you are in the water, physically, your body cannot tolerate being in the water, in the ocean all day, the whole day that you're
No.
at the beach. You
Yeah.
have to get out of the water and take breaks. So I often remind people too, when we talk of trauma work and just working through our emotions and dealing with them, that does not mean that you have to sit in your story and rehash all the details
No.
and relive every experience, and you have to be in that ocean, emotion ocean
All the
all day, every
time.
day, because again, your
Absolutely.
body can't handle that. When you're at the beach, you have to
You
get
dip
out of the
your
water and
toes a
take
little
breaks.
bit and get out. And I love that
Yeah, yeah,
analogy because I think that's what keeps people away from it because they think,
yeah.
oh my God, they're going to drown
Right, right.
and they're
Or
going
if
to
you think
get
of like,
stuck in it.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'll I've probably taken this analogy so far with
I love
clients and
it.
stuff
I
that I work
love
with,
that. It
but
makes sense.
part of it too, I think, like think of when you're, if you've ever been to the ocean, those waves that come, they can be really big, and you can't just plow your way through the
No.
waves. If you try to push against it, oh, it will knock you out. But instead, like I love to boogie board. If you've ever done that, it's
Yeah.
just fun,
I haven't done it.
Um,
I've dreamed of it.
it's fun. I was introduced to it actually when I was in graduate school, and so I feel like I've been kind of formulating this metaphor and analogy for
I
like a
know.
decade. But when you're doing that, or anytime, if you're just wanting to get further out in the water, you have to work with those waves. You have to kind of, jump with the wave, dive under it, kind of. And again, to me, that represents learning to work with the emotion, learning to work with what's going on instead of, trying to resist it or
No,
push it
you
away.
can't be. It's the time
Yeah.
process is needed. Is learning how to
Yeah.
manage your energy.
Yeah. And then
Yeah,
again, taking it even further, if you've ever been to the ocean, whatever they'll say, hey, bring it in, people. We see this rip current out there. We don't want you to get sucked out. Because again, I think that's a fear too, is
yeah,
people feel like they're just going to get sucked in and consumed
and
by
they're
this
not going to come
emotion.
back out. Yep.
And that can happen, right? That can happen. So again, therapy and trauma work and all these different forms is learning those tools and those strategies to help you not get sucked into the emotion or stuck in
Yeah,
that water. Finding ways to take breaks, finding ways to say, oh, okay, I did my time in the water, in the ocean, in the motion, and I need to rest.
no,
I think
absolutely.
resting and taking care of your body is again
It
so
really
much
is.
part of
That's
this.
why, any good therapist or a counselor would give you only what you can handle
Yeah, yeah,
and give you in small dosages,
yeah. And a
right?
thing, and
Yeah,
two, a big thing, I guess, in my training was always starting where the individual is.
absolutely.
Like I said, if they're way back in the mountains, I can't expect them to show up at the beach if they're just not
No,
ready to
no,
go
no, no.
there.
So do you remember, the work is about the person who's undergoing trauma. It's not about the
Yeah,
therapist. So you have
yeah,
to
yeah,
you have to give it in small dosage when they're ready, what they're ready for, and that's
yeah,
your job to tune in. And that's how I tune into that. And
yeah.
it's just little bit at a time. And it's better for them to, week later they come back, they have process and they are connecting the dots and they're asking the naturally, organically the next question. It's
Hmm.
like this, and then you give them that, and
Yeah.
that's why, it's, rest assured that anytime when you're doing trauma healing work, that, like Vanessa said, you're not going to be drowned in the ocean and never come out. You
Yeah.
just, wet your toes, feel the waves a little bit, and you just walk back to the beach whenever you want to. It's too
Hmm.
overwhelming, and that's how the inner work has to be. It's organic.
Hmm.
Organic means whatever needs to heal and whatever you are ready to heal, it will naturally show up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we don't go digging for trouble, right? We don't go digging for, let's see where there has been trauma in your life. I'm like, no, life is working, leave it alone.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
something you need to heal, you'll
It'll
know.
come up. Yeah.
It'll come
Yeah.
up, and that's what we work with. This is
Yeah.
not a planned treatment. That's why
Right.
this is a very organic, intuitive allowance and understanding the bigger picture
Mhm.
work, and it just happens naturally. So not to worry on that matter.
Yeah. And I think it's all about how you approach it too. Because I've had people that have come into the therapy space and they're like, okay, Vanessa, tell me what's wrong with me. Tell me like all the stuff
Yeah,
that I need to
slow down
do.
a bit.
Right. And it's like, first of all, there's nothing wrong with you. Second of all, what comes up, what needs to come out is going to come out. And it's also when you're willing to go
Yeah,
there, you know.
absolutely. Yeah, I have like clients come and tell me, well, I want to try this just to see.
Yeah.
I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Is something wrong at this point? What's up? What's happening right now?
That's
Life
where
is
I always get
good.
curious.
Life
Like if
is
they
good.
come in, they're
And
like, I just want to try it. I've heard about it. I'm
I'm like,
like,
no, just then get out of
maybe
here
there's
and enjoy your good life.
yeah.
Get out. We've got enough trouble of the day to handle. We don't need to go digging, right? So I
Yeah.
send them off and I'm like, no, you're good. If something isn't right, you know where to find me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you're happy. So just get out, live your happy life. Like, what kind of a
See ya.
counselor are you? Don't you want to like pull me in as a client? I'm like, no, I don't.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a very organic work. It just really tune into how you're feeling, body,
Yeah.
mind, soul. Write it down, ponder upon it, be curious.
I
Don't
love
be curious.
curiosity.
Be curious as to, I wonder why am I feeling this? What is this? And
Yeah.
don't hang on to it for your dear life. Let it go.
Yeah.
Be curious means you're curious, and then the next thing you know, you're having fun. And
Mm.
trust me, it'll find you. If there's something in there and you're curious, it's going to come knock at your conscious, like saying, this is not, this is what it is. And
Yeah.
then you just, play with it. It's an adventure, really.
Yeah.
Play with it. And I know that, we're all being born in like the shame culture that something is
Mm.
broken. Being trauma does not mean that you're broken, because we're all broken that way. It's really, trauma is to break us whole.
Yeah.
It's to break us open. It's like to crack a nut to see the truth, see the essence inside. It's part and parcel of human being. So, at least at the mental level, let's put the shame. It doesn't belong. In the new world we're entering, that's not part of the vocabulary.
Yeah.
And it's really more being present to what is showing up. Can I
Hmm.
be true and honest to that?
Yeah. And that's where, like, again, the mindful practices of connecting with
They
your
are paramount.
body,
They're paramount.
whether it's, yeah, whether it's yoga or just any sort of body movement or body work, there can just be such a power in that of becoming
It's
present and mindful with your
absolutely
body.
simply going for a walk in nature,
Yeah.
hug a
Yeah.
tree. I'm a tree
Yeah.
hugger. And, breathe.
Yes.
It'll stir the surface, it'll stir stuff,
Yeah.
and things will naturally rise to the surface. So
Hmm.
if you are going to, repeat the trauma story, see if you can shift your perspective on a little bit. If you can
Hmm.
change your story so you're not re-traumatizing yourself,
Right.
reach out for help. And you can find Vanessa, where's your clinic? In Ann Arbor, Michigan?
Oh, we're not there
Online.
anymore.
You know,
Yeah.
there's no,
I still practice. I still practice. I have my license still in Michigan. But I am full-time mom right
the
now,
full-time
but I
mom
do have,
pretty much
yeah.
is clients. But if you
I
want
do have
to,
a,
yeah,
yeah, but people can come to my Instagram page, message me.
message you.
I do a little part-time work when I can. So
So right
if
now you
people are
just want to be a mom.
interested,
So her
yeah.
Instagram handle is VC Wellness.
Yep,
V
VCB
for
Wellness.
Victor, C, B for boy, wellness. So
Yep.
check her information that she's shared there. If you want to get in touch with me, Puri at ayurvedichealingcenter.com. You can schedule a half an hour complimentary consultation to discuss if you feel called to do that. But I do want to announce that in the summer months, I am revealing this big masterclass webinar series, free, on finding the healer within and healing your emotions. So stay tuned to that. I will have more information ready for you. They're going to be like powerhouse webinar series for us to get the conversation rolling and to dip our feet into our inner world and know that healing and wholeness is available for you. So stay tuned. I will be sharing more detail with you. And if you haven't yet gotten my second book, which way, Wake Up and Heal, 6 Steps to Emotional Freedom. There's a lot of relatable short discussions and very impactful tool for you to work with what's showing up. And I am starting a book club where we will be using my book to begin with, where we can just start discussing each chapter, just start having just light conversation, right? This is not therapy, but it's the way for people to know that we can at least talk about it. There's conversation, you can hear others, and there's the support around you. So if you want to join that book club, Puri at ayurvedichealingcenter.com, send me an email. I just released this announcement yesterday, or I think a day ago. We have 20 people already. So I think this is going to go big. So in this way, we can create healing communities in wherever you are. This is going to become your community. We'll get that started. I want to get the conversation started because most people who need the help, they actually never reach out for it, for the fear of being drowned,
Mm.
for the fear of shame, for the fear of normalizing. Maybe I'm doomed. Maybe this is just my life. It isn't. help is available in all kinds of ways. So these are 2 options for you, 3 options for you. So take advantage of them. Again, Vanessa, thank you so much for
Thank
your
you for
time.
having me. And Mina, I'm so excited for you. You're just doing such awesome work, and it's
Oh,
really
thank you so much.
powerful.
Thank you, thank
So
you. And maybe, you know what I mean? Again, this topic is so big. Maybe you and I will
yeah,
have another conversation
I
and
would
give
love to.
that little baby girl of yours a big hug.
Yeah, and we made it. Oh my goodness.
We
We've
made
been
it.
what,
Tell her
almost an
thank you.
hour, and
Thank you so
she's
much.
still out. So.
Thank you so much. And thank you
Thank
everybody
you.
for listening. And we look forward to seeing you at the next episode. Thank you for listening to Igniting Change, Finding Your Fire. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button, and we look forward to being with you next week.
That was so fun. Thank you so much
Oh,
for having me.